I'm reading from chapter 14 of As It Is by Tulku Urgyen Rinpoche, Volume 1. Involved. Imagine a completely clean and nicely polished mirror that has the capacity to reflect whatever is present. Nothing is held back. If you have it with you up here at my hermitage, the whole Kathmandu Valley in its entirety is reflected on its surface. It has that capacity. That doesn't mean that the mirror has to go out and chase after those images for them to appear here. The reflection happens on the mirror's bright surface, not in some other place. Rigpa is said to be like a mirror, in the sense that it doesn't have to move out towards and then apprehend objects in order to understand. That is the function of conceptual mind, Sim. Sim reaches out, forms labels based on characteristics, and then gets involved in the field of that experience. Rigpa does not reach out and apprehend. It simply allows the reflections to appear as if on the surface of a mirror. That is a huge difference. Rigpa has a certain capacity. Capacity here means the basis, the venue or the medium for unobstructed arising, for unblocked experience. It is not the arising itself. When it becomes the arising itself, which is then apprehended, that is what is called thinking. Capacity is simply the medium or basis for experience to take place. That is not the same as when experience actually occurs and is labeled as such and such. That is called conceptual mind or thinking. This metaphor of the mirror is a very important example. Rigpa doesn't reach out and apprehend, conceptual mind does. Rigpa is also said to be primordially free of any movement that reaches out. Longchenpa's Dharmadhatu Kosha says the following about Rigpa. Utterly uninvolved, and yet this naked state of Dharmakaya is inconceivable. Utterly flawless, and yet it is the source from which all qualities unfold. Rigpa does not reach out after perceived objects, nor does it become covered by them. The objects are reflected within the state of Rigpa. This is unlike conceptual mind, which is diffused or absorbed into the perceived objects. Rigpa is like mercury. If you pour mercury on a plate of dust, it remains separate. It doesn't become mingled with the dust. If you pour mercury on earth or dust or sand, it sticks to itself and stays separate from everything else. That is how Rigpa is. Conceptual mind, on the other hand, is like pouring water on top of the dirt. It turns into mud, or to put it another way, one gets caught up in perceiver and perceived. Rigpa is not absorbed into the duality of perceiver and perceived. It is innately stable. The main point of the training is uncontrived naturalness, which is radically different from our normal habit of thinking one thought after another. To be involved in first thinking of one thing, then another, then a third, is the way to perpetuate dualistic mind. Uncontrived naturalness is not conceptual mind. How do we deal with all these different thoughts? All thoughts belong within three categories: thoughts of past, thoughts of present, and thoughts of future. When beginning to train in meditation, it is not so difficult to deal with thoughts of past and future. Honestly, in Rigpa, the thoughts of past have already ceased, and future thought hasn't come yet. The main problem is the involvement in present thoughts. The opposite of uncontrived naturalness is to be caught up in this present thinking, which is always to either affirm something or deny something, to accept or reject. That all is based on hope and fear. As a meditator, we may have the idea that there is some nasty dualistic state of mind we need to be rid of, and that there is this excellent or attractive state of Rigpa that we need to keep. To involve oneself in accepting and rejecting, holding on to Rigpa, the non-dual state of mind, and regarding thoughts to be something that need to be deliberately gotten rid of, is definitely not the training in uncontrived naturalness. All sentient beings are continuously involved in adding one more link to the chain of the samsaric frame of mind. That is what each thought in each moment is actually doing, perpetuating the samsaric state. How do we end this? This is the real dilemma for a meditator. How to deal with the present thinking that is based on hope and fear, accepting and rejecting. Really, though, it is not such a big problem. Simply recognize mind essence. In the same moment, the present thought has no foothold. It dwells nowhere. It simply dissolves and is no more. In that moment, you don't have to do anything to improve it or make it more excellent. It is already the essence as it is. Not having to accept or reject something at that moment, that is uncontrived naturalness. Train in this uncontrived naturalness as the main core of your practice again and again. It is not the same as doing a session in which you try to maintain a state for a long time until you finally dedicate the merit and stand up. That is not what is meant, because we can only do that a couple times a day. That is called practicing a few times for long stretches. On the contrary, the real practice is short moments repeated many times during the day. These short moments or stretches should be training in uncontrived naturalness. Here is the method to dissolve any thought. Even the most painful notion is a product of one's own thought, isn't it? One labels that over there as painful, then thinks, I can't stand to face it. It simply is too much. It is terrible. It is awful. I can't bear it any longer. This attitude creates one thought after the other. And it is this thought process that becomes overwhelming, rather than the actual painful object. Simply acknowledge that this particular painful thought is just like any other thought. It is not anything other than a thought. The way to deal with a thought is the same regardless of the content. Simply recognize the identity of the thinker, the essence. In that moment, the thinking cannot remain by itself. It simply dissolves. That feeling of being overwhelmed by other people's pain, this feeling that actually is and always was insubstantial and empty, is now in actuality seen to be empty. There is no thing there that actually feels it. It is empty. This is only good for a few seconds, though. The thought dissolves, and there is no problem, but it comes back again as a reoccurrence. The way to deal with this is exactly the same as before. Recognize what it is that feels overcrowded or overwhelmed. Again, you see that there is no thing there. It is empty. Yet you don't stay empty. You can feel. Repeatedly train in this way. Recognize the empty cognizance of mind essence once, and it's the same every time you remember it. You acknowledge the same unconfined, empty cognizance that was previously recognized. We are not enlightened yet. Just because we've glimpsed mind essence doesn't mean that we've reached full fruition. We are still on the path. In other words, we are not fully perfected, not fully accustomed, not inherently stable in mind essence. How to deal with being somebody who is not perfect? Simply train again and again. There is no other way to deal with it than to become someone who has perfected the practice. Whether the problematic it is a feeling or a concept or physical form or condition or sensation, the training is exactly the same. All of these aggregates are indivisible from emptiness from the beginning. Simply acknowledge that. On the other hand, sometimes for a particular type of individual, the pain and suffering of other beings is perhaps too much. Such a person feels that he or she cannot really concentrate on practice. At that time, it is best to get yourself together. In other words, recognize mind essence. Sometimes it's not so easy to remember and one gets carried away. Then it is taught that it is very beneficial to investigate, to take a closer look at both the subject and the object of the feeling. For example, let's say one experiences a feeling of being overwhelmed or claustrophobic or crowded in by the pain. Examine both the subject and the object. The object is the feeling. The subject is the me who feels it. Allow yourself to take a closer look at this intense feeling. Where is it exactly? Where is it actually? Where was it first noticed? And what exactly is the physical location from whence it came? Right now, when this feeling is so strong, exactly where is it? When it vanishes at some point, in which direction does it go? To where did it go? Find the exact location. Also investigate the subject that feels it, this mind that is aware and notices. This approach is extremely beneficial. If pain and dread become too much, one should give a close inspection into both the subject and object of the feeling. Sentient beings do have thoughts, and sometimes our thoughts become overwhelming, too much. That doesn't mean that we should give up at that moment. Of course, when we encounter other beings who suffer, it may seem that we are quite justified in feeling overwhelmed. Actually, though, we have to start somewhere. If you don't have the blessings and the compassionate power to save or benefit others, the place to start is to, at least, to clear up your own confusion. Our own deluded state is close at hand. Being involved in deluded thought has no true substantiality. That is why it is called delusion. There is honestly no concrete thing called suffering, or thought, or feeling that you can really pinpoint as being in a particular location anywhere. If there was, we could say it was material, and it wouldn't be called an illusion or a deluded state. It would be real. You find the feeling of suffering as a concrete thing anywhere, a place where it came out of, a place where it is, and a place where it goes. Is there a solid mind that notices and gets involved in this emotion? Once you discover there is not, there is nothing further to discuss about that. All the practitioners of the past who investigated this in depth failed to discover an emotion's source, dwelling place, or place of disappearance. The same goes for the personal identity, the self. You have to agree that it is an illusion. This is the illusion of emptiness. Every thought is a magical illusion of emptiness. The moment you recognize the experiencer, the falsehood is immediately revealed, in that the thought simply dissolves. This is how to begin. You need to start training. This is, of course, based upon having recognized the empty, cognizant nature of mind. You need to become adept by training and experiencing the nature of mind again and again. Unless you train, you will never become stable. Without becoming stable, the capacity to benefit other beings doesn't manifest. The more we train in recognizing mind essence, the more the innate qualities arise. These are the qualities of insight, compassion, and the ability to benefit others. These intrinsic, enlightened abilities start to unfold further and further. At that point, not only is your own confusion cleared up, you will also be able to benefit any person in front of you who is in pain. Not only that, you will be able to simultaneously benefit all sentient beings in the 3 realms of samsara, even down to the very bottom of the existence, the deepest pit of hell. You can place all of them on the path of liberation in a single instant. All that comes from beginning the training and persevering in it. Let's say there is a moment when a feeling is simply too much, when what you are experiencing is too painful to face. At that moment, Try to remember this while questioning yourself. Where is this feeling of pain right now? Where is it exactly? This overwhelming thing, does it have a specific form or a sound? Does it smell in a certain way? Does it taste in a certain way? Is there something I can take hold of? Don't get caught up in the object. What you feel is your mind experiencing the pain. It is not some other thing. Suffering is mental, right? Can you grab the pain? No? That proves it is empty. To truly have compassion, you need to experience emptiness. Acknowledge that the other person doesn't see emptiness and therefore suffers. That is where compassion comes from. If you don't realize emptiness and the other person also doesn't, you can pity him and say, "Oh, poor guy," but what is that going to help? You need to train in recognizing mind essence. If there were two people swept away by a raging river and both have no arms, how are they going to help each other? Having insight into compassionate emptiness is like having two arms. Merely superficially thinking, poor guy, is all right, but there is no real capacity in that. There is a supplication we often make which goes, "Grant your blessings that we may realize emptiness suffused with compassion." It is this real emptiness, indivisible from compassion, that has the power to benefit others. Superficially pitying other beings doesn't have any deep power to it. We need to enrich ourselves now, saturate our stream of being with emptiness suffused with compassion, and become a master in that. Then you can truly benefit others. That which does anything in this world, that which creates the joys, the sorrows, the indifference, is this thinking mind, nothing other. All the sadness, all the pleasure, and everything in between is a magical trick of this thinking mind. Is there anything other that can create such a show? Everything is mind. The maker, the doer, and the deed, what is created. Are the deeds, meaning what is made, are they what makes the maker, or is it the maker that creates the deeds? Let's change the words from doer and deeds into subject and object. The objects are the 5 elements, and the subject is the perceiving mind. Where the perceiving mind moves the attention towards something, does the previously perceived object move after that mind? What should we pay attention to as the thing of chief importance? Isn't it this doer, the mind? To keep up the subject-object duality and busy your mind with activities is not going to help in the long run. Why keep holding on to perceiver and perceived, subject and object? What happens when you are untainted by outer perceived objects and uncorrupted by the inner perceiving mind? Allow the empty awareness in its nakedness to simply continue. If you allow this, that itself is the mind of all Buddhas. Whether you hear about this in 1,000 different ways or 100 different ways, it is simply this. First, you need to understand and get the taste of it. Next, you need to bring it into actuality. On this path, you first recognize, then train, developing the strength of it, and finally attain stability. That is what it's all about. Acknowledge this moment of being awake, of being uninvolved in perceived objects, in which the perceiving mind is unoccupied, unemployed, free. Don't be tainted by any emotion. When original wakefulness is fully present, fully actualized, that is the meaning of the word Buddha, the purified and perfected awakened state. Growing fully accustomed to and stable in this is itself the path of awakening. First, recognize and acknowledge this. Then train in this and become stable. That is enlightenment. Then you have arrived at transcendent knowledge on the other shore, beyond this shore of dualistic knowledge. Let me tease you a little. This side of knowledge is called science, being a scientist. Transcending the bounds of knowledge is different, as I explained. How many scientists do you know who have become enlightened? Have you heard of any? Well, if a scientist trains in this, he becomes enlightened. That's pretty neat, isn't it? These days, scientists are praised as being the most eminent people in the world because they make devices through which you can instantly talk to someone on the other end of the world, or you can fly through the skies. Well, with this practice, you can go beyond being a scientist. Actually, what science can create is pretty amazing, but still, all science is on this side of the shore of knowledge. The profound samadhi means the other shore of knowledge, having transcended dualistic mind. Right now, if we compare ourselves with a scientist seems to be better, right? But once the scientist arrives on the other shore, any mental doings is of no use at all. At that point, as far as we are concerned, it is much better to arrive on the other side at transcendent knowledge. Here's a question for all of you. Exactly how much benefit is there from scientific knowledge the moment you're in the bardo? Think about it well. When a scientist is in the bardo, he no longer has any gadgets to help him, no spy satellites or jet planes to move around in. In the bardo, isn't whatever one created of absolutely no use? Scientific knowledge is not transcendent. The knowledge that we are supposed to train in is transcendent knowledge, prajnaparamita. Honestly, whatever mundane, unspiritual actions we do show themselves to be a total waste at the end of this life. They are good for absolutely nothing. Any work that one bothers to complete is pointless unless it is connected with a virtuous outcome. We involve ourselves so wholeheartedly in our tasks with no time to even sit down and enjoy one cup of tea. The sweat from such activity is constantly on our forehead. All that will be absolutely wasted. All that will be absolutely wasted the moment we die. It will be of no use whatsoever. To understand that whatever we do, whatever we have done is totally futile, that is true insight. That is real understanding. Nothing other than Dharma has any real value or substance. What is next then? Apply it. Apply it more and more, and you will capture the stronghold of the view. That is the way to truly understand the Dharma. When we look closely at things around us and in ourselves, we should come to the understanding that everything we have done is basically useless. In realizing I have really fooled myself, there is some understanding to gain. It is not somebody else who fooled me, I fooled myself. In calm, there is a saying, like having stitched up your own mouth. In other words, you can't eat or drink, so you die of starvation. That is what we have done to ourselves. Nobody else stitched up your mouth. You did it to yourself. Just between us, this human life with the complete 8 freedoms and 10 riches, this precious human body is as valuable as a Nirmanakaya manifesting in this world. What we need now is to stop stitching up our own mouths. It is said in many of the guidance manuals that to have the precious human body, not merely a human body, but the precious human body, only happens once or twice in a whole eon. Having achieved this, there is still the risk of returning empty-handed from the island of jewels. This is your choice. This point of time in the history of humankind is on the one hand a time of immense progress and development, and for many people of prosperity. We can say that these are happy times. At the same time, there is no certainty whether someone alive today will be a corpse tomorrow. Any situation can change all of a sudden, so that it's abruptly all wiped away. Such are the times we live in right now. Right now you have some freedom. You are free to choose to practice the Dharma. There is nobody to prevent you. It is all in your own hands. You have the reins, so to speak. This is the time to practice and attain enlightenment. We should really appreciate this opportunity and stop fooling ourselves. The great masters of the past said, a single breath makes the difference between life and death. If you exhale and don't inhale, your body is a corpse. It doesn't take more than one breath not being inhaled, and you are already in the bardo. Each moment we continue to be alive. How amazing. Chapter 14 from As It Is by Tulku Urgyen Rinpoche, Volume 1.